really want to do things very well. People tend to want to do things very well. But I have noticed that if we're not careful, we're going to try and be perfect. It's not that we're doing it for anyone, we're doing it for ourselves. It's a voice in us that can be used extremely well, but if we're not careful, it could cripple us.
Welcome to Worth Quoting, a program sponsored by the Women's Center at Florida Community College at Jacksonville. I'm Carol Spalding Minor, your host today, and with me is Meg Armstrong, who is a consultant, a management consultant on leadership development for high-level women. That sounds pretty exciting and rare. Is there a lot of competition out there for leadership for women? Is that a big market?
It's getting to be bigger, fortunately, because there are lots of women emerging all over the world, not just in the United States, at the top. So people who have a sense about what it takes to arrive and thrive really have a lot to do these days, thankfully.
Well, you started this business a long time ago, at least this philosophy of helping women develop leadership skills at a very high level with your work with governors. Yeah. Can you tell us a little bit about that background?
Well, that was a great accident, which is really one of the threads, I think, in the lives of so many people. In 1982, I got a phone call from a brand new lieutenant governor, a woman, who I had known in a previous life. We were both doing leadership development, and she said, I have just been elected governor, lieutenant governor of Minnesota. And she said, how can I learn this job fast? And into my head popped the idea of answering her question with a meeting of her peers, women who were governors, lieutenant governors, cabinet secretaries, to share the shortcuts and the secrets of being the top dog, the top gun in state government. Well, so that's how I stumbled into it.
Leadership is lonely at the top, and I'm sure that's true for women. So this peer group, what did they offer her?
Our focus, which I think is key to gatherings of women these days, our focus was the business of leadership and management. What you do when you go to work in the morning, how you run big, complicated organizations like yours. So we had a very specific mission. We used to say we were the business school for overnight CEOs.
Well, what do you have to learn to be successful as a CEO, as a woman? And I guess as people want to be CEOs, what kinds of leadership skills are we talking about? What do we mean by that?
Leadership skills are the same, I think, no matter what level you're at. And probably the #1 secret is just do it.
Just do it.
Take action.
Okay.
So many women have wonderful ideas, and they think, well, maybe I need to wait a little bit longer, I haven't got it all figured out, or this just might not be the right time. The real trick is doing it, because once you start it, there's so much energy, you know, in the action.
One of the things I have found is that women think that they already have to have done the job before they do the job. They already have to have qualifications and experience doing something. And the real truth, I think, and maybe you can add to this, is that you learn it on the job. Everybody learns it on the job.
That's really one of the great secrets. You make it up as you go along.
Yeah, you work on it while it's moving, right? You build it while it's moving. And
that's exactly right. And that really is one of the great secrets. I think good leaders, whether they're men or women, tend to have known that for a long time. Second thing is you have to have some kind of a vision. That doesn't mean a huge, big world vision. It means that you have to see something that you think ought to be done. So it's the blend of action and vision, seeing things, that I think are just the two primary secrets of being a leader, being a good manager, no matter where you are, bottom or top.
And this goes beyond public positions of elected officials. It goes into any kind of a management job or anything else. Is that what you're saying?
This secret, this strategy is really true no matter where you are. For private, corporate sector, non-governmental sector, state government, anywhere. It just doesn't matter, and particularly with corporations changing so much all over the world today, And there being so much more emphasis on everybody taking initiative, top to bottom. This strategy of taking action, of seeing something that needs to be done and doing it, seems to be applicable anywhere you go these days.
Okay, well, let's talk about another secret, because I've got about 20,000 questions I want to ask you. What may be the third secret or another major secret that women need to know about leadership?
Well, I ask this question of leaders all over the world as I travel around, and another secret I really love, and that is, if you lose, talk about it like a sports figure. I dropped the ball, had a bad day, game plan didn't work. It's not the end of the world. It is simply a little mistake. And if you're still on the payroll, move on.
If you're not, try and find something else.
That's right, and go quickly. But that is a secret that I learned a long time ago from the first governor I worked for, who basically said, in every day, if you're doing anything important, you're going to have lots of glitches. He said, move on from them quickly.
Don't really beat yourself up about these mistakes,
Exactly.
which we many times do.
Exactly.
So forgive yourself and move on. Also, I guess, forgive yourself, also other people, and move on, not keep bringing that stuff back up. So what's another secret?
Another secret is look for the big problems to solve. The Chinese character, I've really always loved this, for crisis is actually two characters overlaid. One is danger, and the other's opportunity. I think we make a mistake if we avoid the problems, because the real energy, the real opportunity is looking for the big problems to solve.
So how do you prepare yourself for that? I think some people can be panicked or not know how to deal with it. So how, you're saying go seek these out?
Go seek these out, but I'd really like your question. There are really two parts to it. Preparing for problem solving is just preparing for life, preparing for whatever job you have. You pick up basic skills as you go along, and you simply have to trust that someplace in the collection of skills and knowledge and experiences you've had, you've got what it takes. The other issue is really part of the secret, and that is that I've heard great performers say this: the feeling of fear in facing a big problem or a big opportunity should be looked at as merely a sign that you have an opportunity to grow. In fact, one terrific leader that I know says, if he goes a while without getting scared, he begins to worry, because he knows he's not stretching.
He's not really out there.
He's not really out there. He's not really reaching and growing. So that's a secret that I really like, and I remind myself from time to time.
If you're working for someone, how is somebody perceived when they go out and look for a problem or try and stretch? Sometimes there's a resistance or a difficulty in the politics of the organization about doing that.
Well, you want to be strategic about choosing problems, but it's more a question of saying, raising your hand and saying, I'll help with that. If there's a task force or a project that's dealing with that, volunteering, it doesn't need to be a careless or mindless search for problems. There are plenty of them around any office, any workplace, but rather just keeping your eye on the radar scope and looking for an opportunity to say, send me, I'll do it.
Okay, so this volunteering is a stretch, something you haven't done, something that may not have been your job?
Yes, exactly.
Okay, all right. Well, another secret. These are good.
This secret I really like, too, because it's so subtle, and yet it doesn't sound subtle. Work hard.
Yeah, tell me why that sounds subtle.
Well, one of the problems we have in watching really accomplished leaders is they make it look so effortless. Well, you look behind the scenes of the really great performers, the really great leaders in the whole history of the world, and you find men and women who have worked very hard to appear effortless in their craft. Churchill, I happen to be a history major, has always fascinated me. He was famous all his life for quips. Remember in the Parliament, he'd toss off these 20-word quips. He worked on them for weeks. He wrote them out. He practiced them in front of the mirror, in front of his butler, in front of anyone who would listen, so that when he rose in the Parliament and tossed this off, it seemed effortless. Fred Astaire is another good example. Just a splendid dancer. He rehearsed and rehearsed and rehearsed so that his effort, his performance looked effortless. And I think that's a mental eye that we need to have more for ourselves, because so often we say, well, Carol does it so easily. I'm not that good. I could never do it that well. The fact is, you and I know, we work very hard at our craft so that we appear effortless in doing it.
Okay, so I can see Fred Astaire, that's easy. He rehearses the same dance and he just does it in a different place with more people watching. On a job, you don't get that kind of rehearsal time. How, I can see that Winston Churchill, because you just have something handy, you know you're going to get a chance to use it. How would this apply to somebody who's just going day to day?
Well, it depends on what job they're in. But the fact is, whatever you're doing it more often and doing it intentionally gets you better at it. So it doesn't have to be standing up in the Parliament and inspiring a nation. It can be going to work in the morning and just getting whatever job it is you do done very well. Mm-hmm. So it's not just a matter of a rote job, but rather a thinking job as well.
So it's work hard enough to be prepared to look like you're not working hard?
I wouldn't put it that way. To give people a sense of confidence that you have the skills that it takes and that you can rise to any occasion. That's really what it's about.
Okay. So preparation is really important.
Preparation's about 95% of
That's what they say luck is.
Deal.
They say luck is when preparation meets opportunity. And somebody says, I'm just lucky. But it's those two elements that make the luck pay off, I think.
The harder you work, the luckier you get.
Exactly. Okay, well, that's a good one. What's another secret?
This is the secret that I like the best.
Ooh.
Know when to stop.
We all need that one. Okay.
Actually, I think we need it more and more, because life is getting tougher for all of us everywhere in the world. Just seem to be so many more pressures, so much more going on. And the really smart money, really smart leaders and managers, or at least this is what they say when I ask them, say they really have figured out that they've got to learn when to stop. When is the fourth draft of a memo good enough to do the job? Not the 24th. On the other hand, you have to know when the 24th version of a memo is not good enough yet. So knowing the kind of effort it takes to produce what it is you're trying to produce is really a key secret that I hear more and more managers and leaders and just ordinary people getting up and going to work in the morning talking about.
That makes sense to me. How does that relate to perseverance, or does it have anything to do with perseverance, knowing when to stop?
It's part of the same issue. You've got to know when to persevere, when to keep at it, and also when to stop.
Do you know, sometimes, I know in my own experience, I don't stop till I get it, you know, and knowing when to stop, I think, is an absolutely critical thing, and it's not something somebody can teach you other than, I guess, from experience. How do you learn this ability of knowing when to stop?
Actually, I heard a speech about that once given by a very splendid woman who said that she had learned to say, what will do the job? That wasn't quite the question, but that was the spirit of it. Will this get done, what I'm trying to accomplish? And it was simply that question that she asked herself about a lot of things she was doing that allowed her to say, I'm done.
Yeah, this is like the opposite of perfectionism, I guess.
Actually, for women, this might be one of the few gender issues that you could point to. It's almost as though our greatest gift is also our greatest curse. Women tend to really want to do things very well. People tend to want to do things very well. But I have noticed that if we're not careful, we're going to try and be perfect. It's not that we're doing it for anyone, we're doing it for ourselves. It's a voice in us that can be used extremely well, but if we're not careful, it could cripple us.
Okay, well, we need to go on to the next pointer here, the next secret.
Well, an almost final secret, but very important, is don't counsel only with people who agree with you. Look for perspective and not sympathy. Now, I'm sure a lot of us are alike. When we're having a really rough patch, we want to go talk with people who agree with us. Well, do that because it feels good. But we should be talking with our adversaries, with the people who disagree with us, so we can sharpen what it is we believe. And if we're trying to get something done, we must know our adversaries, our enemies, better than our friends.
So are you talking social here, meetings, conferences, telephone calls, all of the above?
All of the above. All of the above. And I learned when I started out, I spent a fair amount of time in political life, in government. I learned by watching really good leaders that the moment they'd had a disagreement, perhaps in a committee room, in a meeting room, even in a public hearing, they'd go find the person they disagreed with, take a walk in the hall.
And make up?
Not necessarily make up, but try to understand the point of view of the other person. It has to do with perspective, not even resolution. That's another step down the road, but you've got to understand not just your own point of view, but also the points of view of people around you. Once you can do that better, once you get in the habit of it, I've observed, and the people to whom I have asked this question say, it really just does give you a much sharper capacity to influence. So the trade secret, if you will, is don't always talk or only talk with people with whom you agree. Look for perspective and not sympathy.
Okay, and how does that work if you are on somebody's staff as well? I mean, I think one of the dangers would be having people around you who only agree with you or who are afraid to disagree with you. How do you suggest people disagree with each other, especially in a subordinate supervisor role?
Oh, that's a good question. You probably know more about that.
I'm sure you have to know your supervisor. I mean,
Yeah.
That's probably part of the answer.
Well, the question or the answer is really being very clear about what the issue is, particularly if you're disagreeing about it. And I suppose the human need is always to disagree without being disagreeable. So if there's one maxim, is to find out what someone else feels and to do it in a gracious way, a courteous way, a respectful way. That's a missing piece in so much of our interpersonal
Right.
relations.
A lot of this is taking the emotion out of the interchange. Is that always a good idea, is to keep yourself in control about how you feel about things?
I think it's more keeping the emotion in the exchange, but using the emotion more productively, more profitably, using the emotion that may have started as anger or irritation and shifting it to understanding. You don't want to lose the emotion. In fact, I think one of our problems is when we either don't have the emotion or get rid of it, put it aside, because then any discussion or dialogue that we have may not really sort of get to the spirit, the center of it. So I'm not for having the emotion go someplace else. I am for making whatever energy we have that's associated with a disagreement sort of stay right there but become productive.
In your experience, do you believe that women really are going to hit the glass ceiling for a period of time? Or do you believe in the glass ceiling at all? Do you think we'll be able to rise above it?
Oh, I think we're above it. You can't look around the country and the world and see women as governors and senators and heads of enormous nonprofit organizations, presidents of educational institutions, and think that the glass ceiling is there. Now, it is true that as you get higher in any organization, there are fewer jobs, and it's tougher at the top. Men know that. So I think we've got to be careful in describing something as a glass ceiling, suggesting that women can't rise above whatever that level is, when in fact women are way above that level everywhere. And you know, Carol, I get to travel all over the world talking to women leaders. It is extraordinary what's happening. Women are emerging everywhere in positions of enormous authority, and when they get there, they're running things wisely and well. Oh, I'm sure we could call something a glass ceiling, but I, for one, think that's a waste of energy on our part as women. We just need to keep going.
All right. Is there anything in your experience that you've seen that particularly derails women, is more of a problem for women than for men, for example, in being successful at these higher levels?
Yes, but I see it as universal.
Okay.
more than for a gender.
All right.
I've observed that in career phases, particularly in the middle years, the management years, that we get very good at hands-on management. We get very good at a set of skills that really do the job for us. What derails men and women is as they get into the top levels of an organization, they're really there to lead, not manage anymore. The number one skill, if you will, is providing strategic direction, the vision thing, the big picture. And if there's one thing that derails everyone, it's looking down rather than sort of looking up and out.
And that perspective you can get over time. You can develop it at any level.
At any level.
How would you suggest somebody get this vision thing? Because that sounds very abstract to some people.
Well, that's really a good question. If I had the answer, I would...
This is a leaders are born and not made kind of question.
Anyone who is trying to get the bigger picture looks at a bigger picture. In an organization, they look at the whole organization, not just their own business unit. If they're in a position of authority in a city or a state, or if they're in organizations that have a broad perspective, they really do look around. They read the newspapers. They meet with and have friendships with people who are different from them. They have interesting life experiences. Sort of keeping your head up every day and taking a look around the whole horizon, not just the portion in front of you every day. It's hard. I'm not going to pretend to you that it's easy. But having a broader perspective, looking at the whole atlas, the whole map of the country, rather than just the street sign in front of your house or your job is really what I'm talking about, and quite easy to do.
Okay, I think that's a good suggestions. I guess the other issue would be, as you're looking at this broader perspective and working your way up, do you have any kind of other secrets or other suggestions for anybody who's wanting to increase their leadership skills and prepare themselves for the future?
That's a good question. I think the shortest way is really to become more active in organizations and networks and communities of people outside or flowing from whatever work you do. There's so much talk about networking these days. I think the better word is communities. And we need to be far more active as a shortcut to meeting people, getting good ideas, getting their perspective added to our perspective. And the easiest way to do it is also the most enjoyable.
That's true. And certainly you've done that in your own profession. I think you're a consultant on your own. And so part of what you have to do is network and make contacts and make a wonderful reputation that gets spread by, I guess, word of mouth almost, doesn't it?
By word of mouth, but I think more importantly, I see all of the men and women I know as part of my own community worldwide. And so I'm always interested in having someone that I meet on a world trip know someone else I know back home. So I'm always helping us get together and to get connected. And that's not only easy to do, it's really very enjoyable. And one of the great secrets for all of us. I
think you're right. That's one. I have probably the world's largest Rolodex, and I think that that's part of what helps me do my job and helps other people do their jobs is putting those people together that have commonalities or interests, geography, whatever it happens to be. And I always learn from that, as well as giving on that help. And even our own experience of getting together comes from a networking kind of a process and being able to follow up with people. I think some people are afraid to make a contact and then follow it further, where you really can build a community of networks. And you probably have friends all over the country, all over the United States. Well, shoot, all over the world, don't you?
All over the world.
Yeah, and I think that's really, really positive.
And it's the same process. It's connecting yourself with other people. It's helping other people connect and watching the energy emerge from that. It's not energy draining. It's really energy producing. If it flows from things that you care about, things that you like, things that you do. So that's really a final secret.
Is there anything that you would recommend for women to read, or anybody who's viewing the program actually to read, that can help move them along in their own processes? I think this program has given them some leads, but is there anything else that you recommend, a magazine, a journal, or a book?
Gosh, that's a good question. There's no specific book, but if I had to make a general suggestion. It's not so much about leadership, it's about life and reading, and that we all ought to read more, not for tricks of the trade, but to broaden who we are as people, and in turn, that gives us more to bring to the table.
So we'll be more interesting and more interested and see these possibilities that are out there.
Well, in a way, I think that's right. Particularly these days where we all think we're so busy. And so our experience is fairly limited. And therefore, reading and doing, back to reading though, but reading both fiction and nonfiction, past as well as present subjects, I see as extremely crucial for any of us, especially for leaders.
Yeah, just it sounds like lifelong learning to me, which of course is very appropriate for us and here at Florida Community College. I'd like to thank you for being with us, Meg, and sharing your secrets of success, for power, for shortcuts to power for women and actually for anyone. Really appreciate your being with us today.
Thanks so much for having me.
Thank you all for viewing.